everyone. I'm Elena, and I'm the founder of the C-Suite Collective. This is a company I created for executive leadership coaching and wellness that supports C-suite executives, entrepreneurs, and founders. Now, more than ever, businesses are running faster and with fewer resources. Burnout, overwhelm, disconnection, and disillusionment are the new norm for teams struggling with an old paradigm. At the C-Suite Collective, we believe deeply that providing massive support for your teams through executive coaching and holistic practices will create an inclusive culture, higher levels of performance, sustainable change, and the organizational impact you desire. You can find us at the c-suitecollective.com. What does it take to move out of a binary conversation as a leader? We'll look at that in our coaching tip for the week. And today in our interview segment, we have Nomsa, Khalfani, and Amy Moy, who are co-CEOs of Essential Access Health, which is a company that has a long-standing commitment to making access to high-quality, comprehensive sexual and reproductive health services and information a reality for everyone. I hope you enjoy the episode today, and remember, something powerful resides within you. I'm here to support you in seeing it and creating it. What does it take to move out of a binary conversation as a leader? For those of you that don't know, in my coaching practice, we talk a lot about binary conversations, which really means there's side A and side B of a conversation. This can look like two people that are in an argument, or two ideologies that are at stake, or two big events that are happening that people don't agree on. And the problem with binary conversations is that there is always somebody who wins and somebody who loses. Or we see that both sides actually lose in the conversation because one is being right and one is being wrong. So there's 4 steps here that I'd like you to think about if you want to get out of a binary conversation with someone and moving towards neutral ground. The first thing is having an open mindset. So here it's all about recognizing the limitations of binary thinking and that there's value of complexity in decision making. So when we look at something as many different issues and multifaceted, you can start to open up the conversation out of one solid way. So this is the idea of opening up the conversation to expand it and create a different mindset that you might not already see. The second step is active listening. So this is the opportunity to pay really close attention to what others are saying without immediately categorizing their ideas as right or wrong. This is also a space to really practice listening to understand instead of listening to respond. The third step, empathy. Practice empathy by trying to understand a different perspective and also thinking about the underlying motivations and emotions of the people that you're communicating with. Sometimes this is really, really hard because we can feel empathy for someone, but we still believe that we're right in our values or our view, which is not necessarily untrue. But empathy comes when you can actually sit with someone and hold them in whatever they're feeling without having a judgment about it. Can you be empathetic and still be able to be with that person instead of having your view override empathy? And the last step is look for a resolution outside of either side. So I often like to think of a football field in that one end where one team is scoring is conversation A and the other end is conversation B. And oftentimes we'll be looking at the entire game on this football field within the realm of the field. And sometimes I'll invite my clients to play a different game entirely. So what if we left the football field and we went to, a volleyball court or a soccer field? Now, admittedly, there are 2 sides on those courts as well, but the difference is that we're playing a completely different game, that we might actually have more generation of ideas and neutral ground inside of the game that we were originally playing. So look for a resolution and step outside of the 2 conversations into something that might be a completely different conversation than you could have ever imagined. And usually that takes multiple people and multiple brains coming up with that solution. Ladies, Nomsa and Amy, I am so grateful for your time today. Just so everyone knows, we are meeting for the very first time on this podcast, and we were connected through one of my coaches, Catherine Folks-Sullivan, and I am so excited to be with you. I've been hearing all about the good work you're doing in the world, your new style of leadership, co-CEOs, which even just saying that is like radical in the world. So I'm so honored that you would be here and you'd share some of your wisdom and your gold. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having us. Yeah, and it's wonderful to be connected with like-minded folks to be able to talk about how we're making shifts and exploring new ways of leading and being and having impact. So good to be with you.
Awesome. Well, where I always like to start is your story. So how do you two know each other? And maybe we can hear how this was all born. So Namsa, do you want to go first and share how you know Amy and how you got in this?
Sure. I know Amy for the last nine, almost 10, it'll be 10 years in March. Can you believe it?
Wow.
Because we've been working together. I joined the organization, Central Access Health, after Amy did. Amy joined prior to my start, and I think she had a large impact on how we, I guess, how we became more visible on the policy side and around our communications. And so I had the opportunity to join the organization where I think she started to really kind of lead the way. Lots of sexual and reproductive initiatives, policies, community engagement. And so we've been partnering in the C-suite for quite some time, and then having the opportunity last September to actually transform our organization together as co-leaders. And so it's been, we're not strangers to each other. So it's, I think that also helped in our transition, is that we weren't two strangers joining an organization for the first time. We knew each other. And I think in this new role, we've become even closer. I think we realize we are closer than we probably realized we were prior to the transition, and just the synergy that exists. She is the yang to my yin, and I think it just, we are different but have so much in common, and I think just bring so much to leading an organization together.
Beautiful. Amy, what's your side?
Well, thanks for that, Nomsa. And, you know, plus one, I did start at our organization, Essential Access Health, a couple of years before Nomsa did. And what a gift her coming to Essential Access was for our organization, both bringing her expertise and operations and program leadership and just her lived experience as a fierce baddie, like just making things happen and showing up authentically, showing up in a way that helps other people feel seen and heard. And so really appreciated working side by side with Nomsa, as she mentioned, for many years in the C-suite. And then when there was an opportunity to have a leadership transformation and transition at our organization, I think our board thought, oh, there's not really a need to look any further. We have two leaders that have been partnering to co-lead in the C-suite, the organization, and help move it forward and drive impact for many years. And with our, I think, complementary skills, as well as our deep mutual respect and shared intentionality and alignment around a vision for shaping the future of not only sexual reproductive health rights and justice, but shaping the future of what an organization that's a nonprofit in this space could look like and feel like for the people who work there.
And what a gift that your board could see that and say, number one, we've got them here. We've got these rock stars. We want to empower them. And it just speaks to the level of partnership already between your board and the two of you. Very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean, because our board could have been like many other organizations, many other nonprofits that think after a transition, you need to bring someone externally into a process or to the organization. And so I think their choice in appointing us as co-CEOs was a testament to what we have been bringing already to the work, into the organization, how they viewed us. I think there was trust between the board and us already, right? And then I think it just was a acknowledgement of the work that we had already been doing for the organization, relationships already built with the board, and I think a challenge, right, to even think about leadership differently. I think, not all folks understand or believe that two people or three, can lead an organization. It's the question of, well, who's really leading the organization? Who's really making the final decisions? And I think we have been able to demonstrate that it can be done and that we are each other's sounding board. We're not in this alone. And I think it just helps the overall goal of really being in this space from the inside out and us really focusing on staff, ourselves, and what does it mean to really walk the walk. So if we say we are really going to focus on strategies to fight against anti-racism, what does that look like, right? And how does that now get played out in a different time? And that when we think about equity and inclusion, those are the strategies to get us to a different place, right? When we think about our policies, how we engage with each other internally, then how does that translate externally? And we get to really model that, right, in a nonprofit and together as two women that are committed to this work and really want to see something different going forward.
That's so beautiful, and I'm looking forward to digging more into your leadership perspective and your new ways of thinking as you run this organization. And I'm sitting there trying to imagine the conversation when the board was like, "Hey, we're going to do co-CEOs," and I'm wondering, like, what was the feeling inside of you two as you heard that request? Like, what did it bring up in you?
I think for me, it brought up excitement and possibility. That for me personally, and Nomsa and I have talked a lot about this, I couldn't imagine being on this journey with anyone else. I also, frankly, couldn't imagine being on this journey alone. And so when the board talked about the co-CEO model for me personally as the first time anything with CEO in it, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
co or solo, as a first experience, it's such a gift to have, as Nomsa said, like a partner in that space. And so when the opportunity came to reimagine and redesign what leadership could look like at our organization and thinking about the co-CEO leadership model and what those possibilities could bring, not only in terms of impact, right, with two partners being able to have our complementary skills to, get the job done, but it's like how we get it done and how we can show up for each other. And we have been talking with a lot of colleagues from across the country who are, interested in, what's possible moving forward and talking about kind of the loneliness of being a CEO. And Nomsa and I were kind of like, looking at each other and smiling, like, oh, it
Yeah.
feels so good not to be lonely because we have each other.
Yeah, I was actually just having a conversation with a colleague last night who was like, can you share some of the experience or what was the board thinking? And not that we have all the insight in terms of what the board was thinking, but I think what came up for me was also trust, that there was trust that they had in us, and that also the recognition of really seeing who we are and that they've been seeing us as leaders over the time that we've been with the organization. So that was exciting. And then I also would add, I think, similar to what Amy said, just the opportunity to jump into, I'm one of those people that likes to jump into new situations, roll up my sleeves, figure out how do we change it.
Yeah.
And so I think there's this excitement about being able to transform an organization during a really difficult time when we think about the work that we do, right? And so it is helping keep things together after a leadership change, right? It is then Amy and I really looking at each other differently and how we want to lead going forward. And then what is that message that then goes down to the rest of our staff? I think having co-leaders opens up the opportunities for your staff underneath you, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could provide opportunities for folks to promote up, but then also expand opportunities and what does it mean to lead? I think Amy and I both have different styles, but when you bring those together, I think adds it adds this extra kind of component to what does it mean to challenge each other? What does it mean to think about leadership and not feel like everything is on one person's shoulders,
Mm-hmm.
but that we pick up for each other when needed to, whether it is one of us just needs to take a breather and step away from the work, or us coming together really deeply to think about what's happening. What do we need to do differently? What do we need to support us in moving that forward? And then how do we also create space for staff to feel free, right, to share with us? We've been in our roles for about a year now. And, I think progress has been made and we still have lots of more work to do. But I think we've been able to kind of set a new foundation for ourselves and for others. And I think the more we get to talk about what it means to share responsibility, to not feel alone, because I still hear those conversations quite often from other friends who are in leadership roles. It is about that loneliness and feeling like, and even if you might be in a space with other CEOs or EDs, there's things that you don't want to share with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to have a partner in the space, then it's not like we're trying to pretend
Mm-hmm.
that we're not, it's not that we are like, well, let me, limit or censor how much I share. We already know what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's not like we have to, create those and, create those, those kind of guardrails, because we are in that space together, the good, bad, and the ugly. And it's like, then how do we figure it out together and support each other throughout that process?
Oh my gosh, what a gift, ladies. Because the thing I want to highlight that I'm hearing, which is super cool, through the lens of doing things differently and a new style of leadership, is that you're even modeling in real time, not doing it alone, and well-being practices that have you taking care of yourself in a deeper way. When in the old model, or we'll call it the old paradigm, everything was on your shoulders and alone and siloed, and so there wasn't a lot of opportunity for well-being care, but also to model it for the rest of your organization. So I think that's such a beautiful place to even start, is with your co-leadership, what it's modeling in real time. So congratulations to that. I'd love to know more about your new perspectives. So at the C-Suite Collective, we are all about creating a new paradigm of leadership and a new way of doing things through the lens of inclusion and belonging. And one of our core beliefs in our value system is that inclusion and belonging is thread through every single conversation, every tool, every strategy session, that it is not separate or a separate branch, but it is literally thread throughout our fabric. And so I'd love to just hear, what are some of the perspectives you're working with as you shift the way leadership has been done in the world?
So I can start by sharing, one of an important journey that Nomsa and I have worked with our staff and board around over the last year is developing a really intentional set of core values. And one of the core values that we've landed on is promoting community health. And of course, we mean that when it comes to the well-being and sexual and reproductive health of the communities that our programs, and partners work with, but also internally. And so it's really important for us, in terms of a shift in leadership, to really foster an environment where everyone can be their authentic selves and live their purpose and embrace their fullest expression. We want to, Nomsa and I have talked, and I've shared this story frequently, that, I have something on my desk that says, what's your biggest accomplishment? And, I think an old paradigm would be like very proud of the last year about these new programs we've brought to the organization, this new funding. But when we shared our core values for the first time in draft form with staff, asked folks how they felt and what these core values brought up for them, and inviting them in this world to put it in the chat because we were having a virtual meeting. And the first word that came up was safe. And when I think about what is that question, what's your biggest accomplishment? Was that even if it was just one person, and hopefully that sentiment and that feeling was beyond that one person, but even with one person saying that something in their workplace and work environment made them feel safe is also just, what I would view as one of our biggest accomplishments over the last year. I think another thing that, and I can share personally, of course, my leadership and my personal evolution is continues, right? We are not, I'm not going to say that because I've been a co-CEO for 1 year, like I've got it all down, right? It's an ongoing process of continued learning. And one of the things in my kind of learning process is to try my best to unlearn the old paradigm of the grind culture that values and time checks and clocks, work hours, and really thinking about, more trust in valuing the time and energy of our and skill of our staff to get the work done, but also recognizing the importance and value of work-life balance and being able to restore and rejuvenate to be our best selves at work and in other parts of our lives. And so trying to really think about how we create more space and time to pause for ourselves and staff is really also a part of the kind of the leadership shift. And, for me personally, and, we've talked about it together and with colleagues, this idea that's really, I think, becoming a revolutionary concept is this rest is resistance, and thinking about how we have to model kind of rest for ourselves to be able to make that a possibility for others, because it's when we are rested and our best selves that we could do our best work and live our purpose in a more authentic way when we feel good.
Beautiful.
And I would just add, I think COVID for me was a blessing in disguise because I think it forced me, I will say, to slow down, think about what's really important and how I really want to invest and use my time. And rest was one of the things that became even more important during COVID. Because we're working at home, we have to create these ways of still trying to do work and address all the other things that are part of our lives. And I think the more we do that with each other, the more we then do that with staff, I think then it just changes how people see their work, how they want to work. And I think we've tried to create flexibility there, and also just trying to remind people that, it's okay to slow down. Everything doesn't all have to be done today. Let's look at how do we move work, but allow people to still do the things that they have to do. And so pausing, having grace is really important. Slowing down, not really burning the candle to the end is important. And I think we have to do that, not to say that that we do a good job at it all the time. It's like we try. But I do appreciate being able to say to Amy, you know what, I need to shut it down. I need to regroup. I need, as Amy knows, I have committed to massages once a month. I've actually increased it to twice a month. But that is, my thing that I need. It helps me stay energized. And so just how we give that back to each other, but then the messaging of that to our staff, I think is very important. Because it is productivity. I'm like, what does productivity even mean? Right? What does that mean? Why should that be the thing to really gauge how well someone is, what they're doing? And just because somebody is in an office in front of a computer doesn't mean they're actually doing your work, right? But so it's like, how do we just create a space where people can engage when they need to engage, go off when they need to, tend to family or other things, or just give themselves a moment of pause and grace, because life is lifing and we need to take those breathers, and that's okay.
Oh my
And I'll
goodness.
just add one more thing that, there's a lot of work to do, right? And the work
Yeah.
that we do, I believe, is critically important. And at this,
Yes.
we can definitely, something also that I've been contemplating and talking about, where we can get caught up in the work, but what's our real job, right? Like we could get caught up in the work. What's our real job and what is our why? And I recently saw something posted by one of my favorite authors and a wise woman that blessed the earth at some point. Rest in power for Toni Morrison, who, in addition to being, a beautiful author, was also a professor. And there's a quote that says, I tell my students, when you get these jobs that you've been so brilliantly trained for, just remember that your real job is that if you are free, you need to free somebody else. And if you have some power, that your job is to empower somebody else. And so I take that very seriously. I've taken that to my heart to think about, how am I on my best days, at least with intentionality, right? Am I showing up to my work with that job in mind, not only in terms of our interaction and work internally, but also thinking about that's the why behind our work and program and policy externally.
Thank you both for sharing such tangible examples of what you're practicing and implementing. And I really also hear personally what your internal work has been and how that's shaping what you bring to your organization, and then therefore shaping what you bring to the world in your stand. So I really just thank you for giving those specific examples. And I'm curious about the culture that it's creating for you all. And you've spoken to a little bit, especially the trust piece and the safety piece. I love those two tangible measurements, because when I'm working with organizations to rebuild culture from the inside out, a lot of the questions I get is, how do we make this a business case as well? Right? Because traditionally in DEIB spaces, it's been a human-based conversation of connection and love, which I'm all for. I still believe that's number one. And we're meeting people who are really looking for the business case of this. So I'm wondering if you've seen any tangible measurements for the business case. And when I mean business case inside your organization, I really mean the results that you see your people creating because of the work that you've instilled and the values, as you spoke to, or the new ways of thinking. Have you been able to track or measure any of that yet? And I know it's super new, so.
It's still early, I would say, in our process, but I think we, from a recent survey we just did with our staff, we're going in the right direction, right? And so I think with our core values and with the things we are really trying to move forward, I feel good to say we're moving in the right direction. But that's not all, right? And I would say the biggest culture shift that will happen for our organization is really the action to those words, right? So it is the policies that we have in place that are clear, that are transparent, where folks really understand how they can promote in the organization. What does it mean to really be coached by folks that are in management positions or in the C-suite, to really about kind of retention and how to expand their vision of themselves, right? It is compensation, right? It's like really being able to pay folks at a rate that where they feel respected and valued, right? It is the benefits that you offer, not just your health and dental and vision, but like time off, flexible schedules. We instituted this year work from home weeks, right? Where it's like you get, we have a flexible schedule. Folks come in twice a week, but where you get to work from home that week, not having to come in, but maybe that's the time to refresh and kind of get things back in place. So we really want to put in metrics that really are able to show a shift in people really feeling respected and seen through compensation, through other benefits, through how we engage, right? Folks want opportunities to engage with each other. That's beyond just the work, but like, how do we engage where we are getting to know each other, right? And understand the lived experience and what all of us bring to the work, because it's beyond your degree. It is what you bring as a person to this work, and how do you want to make sure that the organizations that we fund or do capacity building work, they're actually meeting their clients and patients where they are, right? And seeing them completely. And I think the more we as leaders continue to evolve and grow, I think we'll start to notice shift and changes with our staff, right? Around, again, like Amy was saying, around safety, trust, transparency, how we are able to really, call each other in and out with love, depending on the situation, right? Where folks are not afraid to actually have a compassionate disagreement, but it is about understanding and respecting each other. That I will know we have really done what was charged of us when we know everybody really feels like they are able to be a part of a process that changes the lives and shapes the future outside of what's happening in our organization, right? I want our policies that Amy leads and works on statewide, that actually our staff get to really reap the benefits of all of her work, that we actually have policies that meet the needs of our staff, but also advance access for folks in the communities that we serve.
And that's all, yeah, absolutely, Nomsa. And I would also say, I think Elena, when you were saying earlier, like, oh, there's the heart and like, what's the business case, right? And I just want to also kind of challenge us to think about what are those metrics, right? Is it output, is it outputs or, the different pieces, our staff has always, since I've been there for, over 10 years, has always worked hard. We've done good work, right? How do you measure the impact of a shift in organizational culture? What is the value? With the shift in culture, what are the right questions that we're going to be asking to see if we are actually making the shifts that we are intending? And I do think it is around some of those things that Nomsa mentioned. Our business case is retention. Business case is in asking questions to staff and getting feedback on, do they feel like their work is valued? Can they show up as their authentic selves? Would they recommend working at our organization to other folks? And so I think that those are some of the keys that we'll be looking at as part of like the success metrics, and how that also informs our performance review. What are we actually reviewing and evaluating? Is it productivity? And what are the right questions at this time? And how do we show, a core value is accountability and transparency. And so we want to make sure that we have systems in place to be looking at, are we walking the walk? Are we being authentic to these values? And how are we moving the needle in the right direction?
So beautiful. Yeah.
Can I just add one other thing? We don't make widgets, right? We actually move policy, research.
Yeah.
We provide, capacity building. So I think as an organization, how we define success probably is going to look very different than what maybe other folks are looking at, right? And I think, we had paid a lot of attention on how many people we trained, or, how many folks touched or participated in an action. And all of those things are important. But if I think about leadership and how we move things forward, for me, it is really about the people. Amy and I don't get to do having these conversations, right?
Yeah.
Or really being out in the field if our staff don't have the resources, the empowerment to actually then do the actual work, right? It's like, because they are the ones that are moving our programs forward. They are the ones who are educating and helping health centers and other organizations adjust how they engage with patients that are walking through their door. So when we say no wrong door, it is the work of not just us, but of our staff. And so that's the piece for me when I think of leading differently, is the focus on the people, our staff, because they actually allow us to actually do and move the needle even further.
Yeah, thank you. Because what I really hear from what you're sharing is that the business case for you all is when a employee, I'll just say an employee, there's probably many different levels in your organization, is fully sourced, using rest as a radical, act of resistance. Their heart is full. And when I say heart is full, I mean they're clearly aligned with your mission and vision and your values, and they see themselves in it. There's a longevity and a deep connection to the mission and vision that then fuels them to go out and produce what they're producing. And what an amazing measurement, right? In a time, especially a world when people are quitting because they have no connection to the company, or they're not being heard, or they feel like they are burned out. Amy, you've talked a lot about that, right? Like the grind and the burnout culture that is having people just say, I can't do this anymore, from a human being and a soul level. So I really hear that that's what's emerging for you all in your metrics, which is really, really incredible work. So thank you for what you're doing. I have two more questions for you. This one is not probably the fun one, but for leaders that are listening to this out there, I always like to just say, we talk a lot about what's going well, and I'd love for you to share some of the challenges that you would invite other leaders to look out for, or maybe not even look out for, but expect and welcome for leaders that are in the world that are trying this new method that you all are trying, right? Because this is the other side of the coin. Is I think we talk a lot about what's going well, and not everybody's super transparent around what's not going well. And would you be willing to share some of those challenges that you invite other people to be aware of?
Asking the questions and not being afraid of the answer. I think a lot of times, we make commitments and say we're going to do something, but then really don't want to hear everything, right? We want to keep everything in these pretty boxes with a bow. But if you're truly trying to change the culture of an organization, you got to take it all. You got to take the good, bad, and the ugly. You got to be able to step back, and even feedback that you might think is, no, that's not me. Someone has said it. Someone may feel something about it. You then have to just take a step back to think about, okay, if this person felt that way, is there something for me to rethink? Is there something for me to maybe do a little differently? Doesn't mean you need to change everything, but I think it is really important of some self-reflection, right? Some really just taking in that information for what it is, and then what do I need to do, if any, to think about that differently. I think that's something that is hard for some leaders to actually do. And there's this drive for perfection. I am not striving for perfection, flaws and all, and realizing that everything is an evolution. And if we're not open to learn, to hear, to listen, sometimes it's not that we need to say anything. It's really, we just need to listen and then figure out how we move something forward. And be okay with that, right? Be okay with the things that are uncomfortable. Be okay with hearing something different about yourself. But I think it's what's important. The important takeaway is then what do we do with that information? And it shouldn't be that we then make somebody else feel bad about it, because otherwise it's like, then why are we doing this? And I want to be the leader that can hear it and then work with, whether it's my coach or whether it's with Amy or whether it's just with myself, working with what I hear. I have practices that I've put in place as a leader that, I'm starting to rethink, right? And are those really good practices? I was told earlier on in my career that, you need to create certain boundaries with folks that report to you or report to folks up. And I'm also, a therapist. So it's like you think about disclosure. You only disclose things that actually make sense or can move something forward. But if you're really wanting to relate to people and understand, I think there's some layers of those boundaries that need to come down, because then I think sometimes people feel like you're not approachable or they're not sure how you might respond to something. And we all make mistakes. But then how do we learn from that? And so I'm 54. I'm really trying to live my purpose and do well and, and take the bumps, but realizing that I'm a work in progress. I will continue to be a work in progress and open to feedback that actually allows me to grow. Right. And I think leaders need to do that. We need to do that more often. We need to circle back when we've made a mistake to staff, right? And create those spaces, because then they see the human side of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
They see you as just another human being like them trying to figure it out, but open to figuring it out together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, similarly, I was thinking what initially came up for me was, leadership is not about the destination, it's about the journey. And, it is, and also being okay that sometimes, I have kind of traditionally and in the past been like results oriented, right? And that helped me get to where I am. But, another thing that I've been thinking about today is like what got us here won't get us there. And, and so what are some of the strategies that I also have to continue to unlearn or work on to be able to be an effective co-CEO in this new time? I think that, as Nomsa said, our COVID over the last few years, we've had a national reckoning that for many was not new, but had become part of our more of a mainstream conversation with brands and organizations across the board, including ours, having to have a reckoning with our history of racism and white supremacy in this country. And how does that still show up in our work cultures and leadership, and how do we continue to work on it? And one of those for me is that, kind of trying to unlearn and look at like, oh, we think we have to go to point A to point B. And sometimes we just have to realize, whether we like it or not, whether it's in our control or not, that sometimes there's a loop-de-loop in the middle of point A to point B, because there's some things that we can control and not control. But what we can control is, as Nomsa said, how we react to that, how we learn from that, and how we can create and generate more safety and comfort to a little bit of a whirl that might be unexpected, because that's just part of the way it goes. And we have to kind of imagine that while we want to loosen on this kind of culture of perfectionism, that also things won't go perfectly. And so
Yeah.
how do we react to that? And, I just do want to shout out, Elena, you and the coaches that I think are working with leaders these days to work on this cultural transformation, because while we're trying to do the work internally and, we could think about our work and organization working towards social justice, I think that having these conversations with leaders and working with leaders to reimagine leadership is changing the world, and it's changing our work culture. It's going to change the impact of how we do our work, and really, again, thinking about if our work has to be community informed to have impact, right? I think we're starting to realize that from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services that we partner with to, our partner organizations realize that for our work to be effective, it has to be community informed. Why wouldn't it be important to have our work community need to inform how we work and how we do business also be important, right? And so that those are some of the things also that we're kind of continuing to be a work in progress around.
Beautiful work, ladies. This is also inspiring. Thank you so, so much for sharing your vision and your heart. And I like to ask everyone one question on their way out. And, you can tailor the question to either your organization or the people you're impacting by your work in the world. But if you had one thing to say to the world as we lead into really the next year, even 2024, what would be your banner that you would shout or shout through a microphone with, or hold the banner across? What would you say to people?
I'll let you go first, Amy.
Well, it's leading me back to Essential Access Health's new core values and thinking about where we are now, and particularly as we look to 2024 and what that might mean for the future direction of this country, is how essential it is to respect and actively protect the fundamental rights to bodily autonomy, self-determination, and the ability to live freely with human dignity. Inside and outside, and in our internal and external policies. And we cannot work toward freedom, and we cannot be free until we have the freedom to control our own bodies. And that if we feel we have to, in order to work toward that, folks have to feel free and safe in doing that work as well.
Whew, that's a good one.
Good one. I think, yeah, it's a good one. I think it's been probably a more personal focus, and really looking at and realizing that until everybody is free, no one is free. And I feel like that is my purpose in the work of whenever I am in a space. I am not the voice of all Black women, but I want to lift as many voices as I can. I want to be in a space to really just uplift as many folks or populations or groups that I can, in the power that I have and in the circumstances that I have, to really make sure that I lift or share things that are important to move the needle forward, to move, to change outcomes. I feel a responsibility to improve the outcomes for as many folks as I can. And if that is through my own personal work with individuals that may reach out that want some coaching or support, how I lead, right? And how Amy and I support really the future of this work going forward. We lead an organization with a mixed age group, but many of them will be picking up the torch. I want to pass the torch to many of them, right? And so that's what's important to me, is really that this is not all for me to solve, but it is for me to plant the seeds that hopefully in some years I get to sit back and look at the blossom. That's what that's my kind of, I think that's what drives me. That's my purpose. And I think that's what I was designed to do.
Oh my goodness, ladies. Thank you. Thank you so much. I just thank you for being warriors of light and love and justice in the world. Thank you for being pioneers. I truly am getting from this conversation how on the forefront of this new way of leading you are. So thanks for going first. That takes a lot of courage, tremendous courage, and tremendous wisdom and patience. So thank you so much for the work you're doing in the world, and thank you for being here. If this conversation sparks something for you, let it move through your week. Take it with you. Take on one small action to move the ball forward. And if you want to join our community of leaders who are daring to lead with courage and heart, you can find that at www.elenaarmijo.com or www.thec-suitecollective.com. I reserve a small number of complimentary 20-minute sessions for leaders who want clarity on what they need and insight into what is getting in the way. The practical next steps that create real movement and results in your leadership journey. So you can schedule a call through the link below. It's in the description. Like, subscribe,
Thank you for listening, for showing up, and for doing the work of being human together.